Now, sticking with politics, James Morrow revealed in News Corp papers this morning that as a young activist, the Prime Minister signed an open letter calling for reparations and sovereignty for Aboriginal people. That was back in 1986. James even got a mention from the PM in question time.
I did note the Leader of the Opposition's reference in an article today by that investigative journalist, James Morrow.
James Morrow joins me now. Investigative journalist James, the PM doesn't seem to be too happy with you. Would you like to, I don't know, maybe apologise to Albo?
Well, look, I'm just happy that the PM is reading my stuff and all the fine material you can find in News Corp papers every day. So, you know, good on the PM for showing that he reads our stuff. I suspect he was being a bit sarcastic there, but it also really shows, Rita, what a glass jaw the PM has. You know, you go and you quote his own words back to him, and what does he do? He blows up. And this is the same thing, Rita, that's been happening with the Yes campaign all along. You know, the No campaign went out there. They said, oh, look, well, let's just look at what some of the people have said who are in favor of it. You know, Megan Davis, Greg Craven, all of these people. And, oh, no, don't quote what we said. God forbid you actually, you know, hear what we think about this issue and what it might mean. So, I mean, for Albo to complain about this, well, you know, he should be saying that he's proud that in 1986, you know, as a young 20-something-year-old, he was 23 at the time, you know, he was out there proudly activating on this issue, and he's out there today as Prime Minister. I don't think he's got anything to be ashamed of, because if this is what he believes and this is what he wants us to vote for, stand by it, PM.
Well, and we showed footage earlier that this is still his position. As recently as a couple of years ago, he stood up and said the same thing. He pledged a treaty, and yet he's now pretending that this is all just a fantasy, that the talk of treaty is just some sort of a conspiracy from the No camp. Surely,
yeah, I mean,
you can't expect the Australian people to buy that.
You can go back to Labor Party platforms. You can go back to things he has said. It's not just, you know, Peter Dutton talking about the 34 times he's talked about the Uluru Statement. It is over and over and over again. He has talked supportively of a treaty. Now, this is fine. If that is your position, then that is fine. And let's have the debate about what that means. And it's all really clear there in the Uluru Statement. You know, there's a formula: voice, treaty, truth, whatever truth is, and we can sort of argue about what that's going to look like. But putting that aside, you know, for them to suddenly say, no, all we're talking about now is the voice, like the other two parts of this don't exist, and that the voice just exists in a vacuum, and we go there and we stop at that point, and it never goes any further than that. No one's buying it, and it just feels really intellectually dishonest. Let's have the debate. Let's talk about it. You know, people know where I stand, where you stand. But the PM now can't just suddenly act like years and years of saying, oh, yeah, let's have a treaty, let's do this, let's do that. Doesn't exist. And that is not the program of his government. We're going to see at the Labor conference a lot more push towards these sorts of things coming up, too. So for him to run away from this, I think, is dishonest and, frankly, does himself and the Yes cause a disservice.
They just look dodgy. We played footage Monday night of him from election night. The very first thing he said during his victory speech was he was going to implement the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. And that includes treaty, and we played footage earlier tonight of him again talking about treaty just a couple of years ago in Parliament. Now, moving on to the US, Donald Trump has been indicted for the third time, charged over his efforts to overturn the 2020 election result. James, what are your thoughts on these latest developments?
Well, you know, I thought that this indictment was going to be a lot more serious than what it was. Having read it, it's very confused. I think that the prosecutor has really overreached here. I would note that this same guy, Jack Smith, Jack Smith, if that is his real name, but Jack Smith has gone and about 10 years ago, he indicted and charged the Virginia governor with corruption, and he wrote a very broad indictment that was eventually thrown out by the U.S. Supreme Court 8-0. The charges were vacated against that governor. He has real form in this, and I think he's done the same thing here. So much of what Trump is accused of doing is protected political activity, protected First Amendment activity. Democrats have questioned the election of the president before many times, as you referenced in your monologue. And the idea that suddenly this is a crime because it goes against the Democrat narrative is really sinister. And all of this is about one thing. It is stopping Trump from being president again. This is not American. It is third world behavior. I'm sorry.
It is. This is banana republic stuff, using your Justice Department, your highly politicised Justice Department, to target your biggest opponent. And Donald Trump, as we know, is leading the polls by a long way. There's really no other Republican who's close to him. DeSantis is a distant second. He's going to be the candidate at this stage, and you can understand why trust in these institutions has plummeted in the US, and that's a dangerous thing in itself. James Morrow, thank you for joining me, and we can see you 8 p.m. Friday nights for the US Report.